What would you do if you stumbled upon the body of an innocent young woman, severed in half, drained of blood, and left in a grotesque and public way? Her life, cut short in a manner that defied explanation, would quickly become one of the most mysterious and chilling unsolved crimes in American history. Her name was Elizabeth Short, but she would come to be known forever as the Black Dahlia. On January 15, 1947, in the heart of Los Angeles, a mother walking with her child through a quiet neighborhood would make a discovery that would chill the world to its core. At first, she thought she was seeing a mannequin, an unsettling image in itself, but what she was looking at was far worse. It was the lifeless body of a 22-year-old woman, posed in a disturbing way. She was severed cleanly in half at the waist. No blood at the scene. No witnesses. Just a gruesome and puzzling image that would forever haunt the city. This was the beginning of the Black Dahlia case, a case that remains unsolved to this day. But what happened to Elizabeth Short? Who killed her, and why? And why was her body left in such a grotesque and theatrical manner? To understand the horror of what happened to Elizabeth Short, we must first understand who she was. Born in 1924 in Boston, Massachusetts, Elizabeth, or Betty as her friends called her, came from humble beginnings. She was the third of 5 children in a family that struggled with a heavy burden of loss. At a young age, Elizabeth's father abandoned the family, and shortly after, her mother, struggling to care for 5 children, was forced to put Elizabeth into foster care. Despite the hardship, Elizabeth had big dreams. Her dream wasn't just to escape her circumstances, it was to break into Hollywood and become a star. And so, at the age of 22, she boarded a plane and left behind the cold streets of Massachusetts for the sun-drenched boulevards of Los Angeles, a city that promised fame, fortune, and a new life. But her dream was never realized. Upon arriving in Los Angeles, Elizabeth was determined to make a name for herself. She had a striking beauty, dark, expressive eyes, and a slender frame that caught the attention of those around her. She soon became a familiar face in Hollywood circles, frequenting local cafes and meeting people who were connected to the movie industry. But despite her undeniable looks, Elizabeth struggled to land acting roles, and she never achieved the fame she so desperately sought. Her life was filled with brief and often fleeting relationships. She was a woman trying to carve out a future in a city that chewed up and spit out many aspiring actresses. Some people who knew her described her as a kind soul, while others said she was a bit mysterious, never quite revealing all of herself. What was it that Elizabeth Short wanted? Was she just another woman searching for love and stardom? Or was there something darker lurking beneath the surface of her life? In the days leading up to her murder, Elizabeth was staying in a small, modest rooming house in Los Angeles. She had no known enemies, and though her relationships with men were often brief, none of them stood out as red flags. Still, something was about to happen that would tear apart the fragile existence she had built in Los Angeles, and end her life in the most horrific way possible. Some theories suggest that Elizabeth's murder may have been the result of a crime of passion involving someone deeply embedded in the Hollywood elite. Perhaps she was in over her head, and the dream she sought so desperately led her to a place where the boundaries of power and control crossed in the darkest of ways. As the investigation deepened, some investigators began to theorize that the killer's psychological profile might offer clues to their identity. Whoever had committed such a brutal crime had not just ended a life, they had made a statement. Was the killer someone who was obsessed with Elizabeth Short? Or was the murder part of a larger, more sinister narrative that we have yet to fully understand? Theories ranged from serial killers to political conspiracies, but the one thing that stood out above all was the idea that the killer had a deep psychological need to not just kill, but to create an image, a display, of what they wanted the world to see. As the investigation stretched on, the name Dr. George Hodel began to resurface, and with it, a new layer of intrigue. Hodel was a respected physician, an affluent man with connections in Hollywood, a man whose life was marked by controversy and darkness. The connection between him and the Black Dahlia murder seemed, at first, tenuous. But the more investigators dug, the more chilling ties began to emerge. Dr. George Hodel was a man whose behavior was as erratic as it was mysterious. In fact, he was known to have had numerous affairs with women, many of whom were young and vulnerable. Was it possible that Elizabeth Short had crossed paths with him during her brief time in Los Angeles, perhaps at one of the many parties or social gatherings that Hollywood was known for? Or could there have been a more sinister connection? As the investigation continued, it became clear that Hodel's personal life was marred with scandal. He had been suspected of various crimes throughout his life, and there were whispers about his connections to the Los Angeles underworld. But it wasn't until 1949 that he was formally brought into the spotlight, when his own son, Steve Hodel, would later claim that his father was a murderer. Dr. Hodel's potential involvement in the murder was based on circumstantial evidence. There was no direct proof that linked him to the crime, but there were several pieces of the puzzle that made him a suspect worth investigating. First, there was his connection to Elizabeth Short's death. Elizabeth had lived in Los Angeles for just over a year before her murder, but there were whispers that she had encountered Dr. Hodel. She had reportedly attended some of the same social circles as him, people who were connected to the world of Hollywood and its dark secrets. Second, there was the unsettling possibility that Dr. Hodel might have been capable of such a brutal act. He was known to have a complex relationship with women, and many believe that his disturbing behavior could have escalated into something far more deadly. Investigators noted his ability to manipulate people, a trait that would have made him a dangerous suspect. But it wasn't until later, decades after the crime, that his son, Steve Hodel, would claim that his father had confessed to the murder, in a disturbing series of revelations that would add another layer of mystery to an already perplexing case. Steve Hodel's investigation into his father's role in the Black Dahlia murder would ignite a firestorm of speculation. Steve, a former LAPD detective, would go on to publish a book in 2003 titled Black Dahlia Avenger, in which he made a compelling case for his father's involvement. According to Steve, his father had admitted to the crime in a series of cryptic conversations, and Steve's research uncovered disturbing connections between Hodel and the events surrounding Elizabeth Short's death. But was it really Dr. Hodel who killed Elizabeth Short? Or was there more to the story? The investigation into his possible involvement would continue to generate debate for years to come, with some believing that the killer was never caught, while others point to Hodel as the only person who could have committed such a meticulously staged crime. The Black Dahlia case is a labyrinth of theories, each more bizarre than the last. And as the years have gone by, the theories have only multiplied, offering a dizzying array of potential explanations for the murder. Was Elizabeth Short the victim of a deranged serial killer, or was she part of a much larger conspiracy? One theory that persists is the idea that the Black Dahlia was a victim of a powerful, shadowy figure, someone who had the means to orchestrate the crime in a way that would send shockwaves through the city. But who could have had such power? Could the killer have been someone with connections to the Hollywood elite, perhaps someone who had a stake in Elizabeth's future, or lack thereof? Theories about the killer's identity range from a disgruntled lover to a professional hitman. Some believe that Elizabeth's murder may have been the work of a serial killer, a man who had already struck before, but had yet to reveal his true identity. Others speculate that Elizabeth was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, caught in a twisted game that had far more to do with power and control than anything personal. As the case grew colder, some began to wonder if the Black Dahlia was the first in a series of similar murders. There were rumors of other unsolved deaths that had a striking resemblance to Elizabeth Short's, each marked by a similar level of brutality and an eerie absence of evidence. The idea of a serial killer began to take root, and investigators began looking into other murders in the Los Angeles area around the same time. Could Elizabeth's death have been part of a larger pattern, a string of killings that had yet to be uncovered? But there was another, far more bizarre theory that would emerge over time, one that involved the supernatural. As strange as it sounds, some began to speculate that Elizabeth Short's murder was not just a physical crime but a spiritual one. Could her death have been part of an occult ritual? Some believe that Elizabeth was chosen, not because of who she was, but because of what she represented, a woman caught in the ruthless and exploitative world of Hollywood. There were reports of ghostly encounters near the locations connected to her murder. Visitors to the area where her body was discovered have claimed to hear eerie sounds, whispers on the wind, faint footsteps that never seemed to belong to anyone. Could Elizabeth Short's restless spirit still haunt the streets of Los Angeles, seeking justice for the life she never had the chance to live? As the years have passed, the supernatural theories surrounding the Black Dahlia murder have only grown, adding an extra layer of mystery to an already enigmatic case. Whether one believes in the paranormal or not, the possibility that Elizabeth's death was more than just a murder, something darker, something otherworldly, has captivated the public for decades. The Black Dahlia murder remains one of the most infamous cold cases in American history, not just because of its grisly details, but because of the lasting impact it had on popular culture. The case inspired countless books, films, and documentaries, each telling the story of Elizabeth Short and the horrifying mystery surrounding her death. Movies like The Black Dahlia, 2006, based on a novel by James Ellroy, as well as numerous documentaries, have kept the story alive in the public consciousness. Each retelling of the case adds new details, spins the story in different ways, and leaves viewers with more questions than answers. Elizabeth Short's name has become synonymous with tragedy, with her legacy etched into the annals of true crime. She represents not only the victim of a brutal murder, but also the person who could have been, an aspiring actress whose dreams were shattered in the most horrific way imaginable. But what is it about the Black Dahlia case that keeps people fascinated even after all these years? Is it the brutality of the murder? The glamour of Hollywood? Or is it the chilling thought that the truth may never be revealed, that the killer may have gotten away with murder so perfectly staged, so calculated, that it remains unsolved to this day? For many, the Black Dahlia case isn't just about finding the murderer. It's about the mystery itself, about the possibility that there's a hidden truth out there, something dark and dangerous that no one has uncovered yet. The case continues to captivate those with a thirst for true crime, for the unsolved, the unknown. And as long as the case remains unsolved, the theories and speculations will keep multiplying. The Black Dahlia case is a mystery that will likely never be solved. Despite years of investigation, hundreds of suspects, and countless theories, we still don't know who killed Elizabeth Short or why. Her case continues to haunt Los Angeles, and with each passing year, the questions only grow. What happened to Elizabeth Short? Why was she chosen? And why did her murderer leave such a grotesque display? We may never know the truth, but the search for answers will continue, as the Black Dahlia case remains one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries in American history. What do you think happened to Elizabeth Short? Who killed her, and why? We want to hear your theories. Share them in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to keep up with more chilling true crime cases. In our next video, we'll be diving into another dark and eerie case that still sends shivers down the spine. Stay tuned.